This river was one of North America's most productive salmon habitats. But today, the salmon population has dropped to dangerously low levels. What unfolds when this once abundant source of food, economic stability, and cultural significance is no longer available to the communities that depend on it?
Salmon are a cornerstone of who we are as Indian people on the Klamath River. So for all of our tribes, salmon are sacred.
Can the community win the battle to save them before it's too late?
We got to this point where we were looking at the extinction of our way of life.
Here in the beautiful Klamath Basin, amidst the oak trees and towering redwoods, the Klamath River stretches over 250 miles, flowing from southern Oregon through northern California and into the Pacific Ocean.
The Klamath Basin really has a unique biodiversity with all kinds of runs of fish in the Klamath River.
With river, lake, and wetland habitats, this area is home to an array of flora and fauna. However, one animal is held in especially high esteem: the Pacific salmon. The Klamath was once the third largest salmon-producing river on the West Coast. Its bounty provided not only sustenance, but a cultural foundation for the neighboring indigenous communities, including the Yurok, Karuk, Hupa, Shasta, and Klamath tribes, who have called the area home for millennia.
Growing up in a traditional fishing family, it was a whole part of my life. We stayed up late. We put fish in the smokehouse, in the kitchen, on the porch, in the yard. There was fish in the back of my dad's truck that he would take to elders and other people.
These stewards of the earth protect the salmon that provide for them and for the world.
This is our best case scenario. Look at that. See that?
We used to have 1 million salmon returning to the river, and that was because we were able to manage our landscape holistically, from the ridgetop to the riverbed.
I was always taught that it's very much our responsibility to care for the fish, the way they care for us. And that's something you'll probably hear from everybody on the river.
But in recent years, the salmon population has seen a dangerous decline.
So we went from 1 million salmon in the river to what we have today, which is maybe thousands.
So what happened to the once abundant salmon? Beginning in the early 1900s, the local power company started installing hydroelectric dams on the Klamath River to provide electricity to the surrounding communities. But over time, 4 dams in particular caused serious unintended impacts.
The consequence of building these dams was that about 400 plus miles of historical spawning and rearing habitat for salmon all of a sudden were off limits to salmon. So about half the Klamath Basin was inaccessible to the fish.
The dams also contributed to a degradation of the river's water quality, creating a breeding ground for parasites and bacteria, including harmful blooms of cyanobacteria, which is toxic to animals and humans, and ultimately causes fish to suffocate.
The upper Klamath Basin is a volcanic river basin, and so that nitrogen and phosphorus-rich water would get trapped in a reservoir behind a dam. It'd get hot in the summertime, and there'd be massive blooms of algae.
So what we have seen was a direct impact on our salmon from the creation of the dams.
Then, in 2002, disaster struck. The damage done by the dams became painfully clear as tens of thousands of salmon died in the river.
It was historic and tragic. Salmon, they were just stacked on the banks, rotting. Really, it's the smell that I won't ever forget.
It was a drought year, and an irrigation diversion to farmers and ranchers resulted in the river's dangerously low flow. The crowded conditions and warm water temperatures led to an outbreak of parasites and bacteria that decimated the spawning salmon as they traveled from the ocean back up the river.
And so in the year of epic drought, the irrigators got the benefit of the doubt, and they got the water, and the salmon got shorted, and as a result, we had the largest fish kill in Klamath history.
The whole river, after the fish kill, I mean, we're just like broken. We were just in this moment of really just heavy despair.
In the years since this ecological disaster, extreme weather has exacerbated the river's problems, contributing to warmer water temperatures and more frequent droughts. As a result, the salmon population continued to suffer.
We started to notice they were sick. They would have lesions or gill rot, and then they were dying.
And with fewer fish available, people's eating habits began to change, causing serious repercussions for the people along the river.
We had diabetes and heart disease, and those kind of things started to show up in our population in epidemic proportions.
And so all of a sudden we were talking about dams not just harming water quality, harming fish runs, but these dams are contributing to people dying earlier than they otherwise would by denying them their traditional foods.
A loss of salmon means a loss of culture, tradition, and ultimately, identity.
Our teachings tell us that if there ever comes a day when there's no more salmon in the river, there'll be no more need for humans here on Earth.
In the early 2000s, Molly and Frankie Myers, Leaf and Chuk Hillman, and other community members leapt into action. Their efforts grew into a grassroots campaign aimed at removing the 4 dams on the Klamath River.
The Bureau of Reclamation, the federal government, and state government also have a responsibility.
The biggest impact that you can have is remove dams. Anything short of that is not going to recover the salmon.
We could do nothing and perish forever, or we could fight. And we chose to fight.
Some traveled as far as Edinburgh, Scotland, to protest the dam's parent company, Scottish Power.
How are we going to influence this big multinational energy company to listen to tribes, to sit down and negotiate an unprecedented dam removal project? So about 30 of us loaded up on planes and flew to Scotland and showed up at their shareholders meeting.
Nobody had their passports. Nobody had ever been out of the country. Some people had never flown. That was a big deal.
Due to an unexpected change in the dam's ownership, the fight continued back in the United States.
Scottish Power sold Pacificor, the subsidiary that controlled the dams here, to Berkshire Energy. And so now we had to chart a new destination, and we were headed to Omaha, Nebraska.
That was the beginning of our battle against the richest man in America at the time.
Undam the Klamath and bring our salmon home. Undam the Klamath and bring our salmon home.
We're here today to ask Warren Buffett to do the right thing and take these dams down that are choking our river.
Undam the Klamath! They're killing our families, they're killing our culture.
The battle to remove the 4 dams took more than 20 years.
Take back your toxins! Take back your toxins!
But despite the lengthy campaign and multiple setbacks, this group of activists never gave up.
The Yurok people, the Kaduk people, the Hupa people started coming together and really realizing the magnitude of the fight that we were in.
I don't want my kids to ever have to feel like they're in danger of losing who they are.
Their perseverance paid off. In 2022, corporate and government stakeholders finally agreed on a deal to demolish the dams. The following summer, work began on what is now called the largest dam removal project in U.S. history.
Dam removal is only the beginning of it, but it's really about revitalization and restoration of the people of the basin.
I think a lot of us feel really good, really proud of this thing that can live on and hopefully be an inspiration to other people in the world that, you know, this is possible.
The fight for dam removal may be over, but the fight to restore and maintain the balance of the river and its ecosystem continues on as the communities adapt to a changing climate.
We have to stop looking at this world as a resource, as something to be extracted or taken from. And I think the fight for us for climate change is pushing this perspective that we're a part of this world. Every single one of us, every single day, we've got to reconnect with the world around us and change the perspective of who we are as a people and why we're here on Earth.